we come from a very homosexual era of hip hop as well. There was a radio personality once upon a time. Her name was Wendy Williams, and she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such. And now it's all come full circle. There were many situations, none of which to talk about, but there were many situations back in the day in my career, and it's all coming full circle now.
Welcome to New Viral Drama, where Hollywood's dirty laundry ain't getting tucked away, it's getting dragged out and put on full blast right in front of the world. Viewer discretion is a must. This one's not for the faint of heart. What you're about to hear comes straight from the federal courtroom, word for word, as reported by Inner City Press. And just when folks thought this trial couldn't get any wilder, boom, out walks Wendy Williams. That's right, Wendy, the queen of messy truths, the woman they tried to push off the air. Now she's the one holding the mic, and this time she's under oath. After years of whispers, warnings, and being blackballed by the same machine she once exposed, Wendy's finally unloading the full truth. And this ain't just about Diddy. She's lighting up the whole rotten system. From the shadowy moves of Jay-Z to the notorious silence around R. Kelly, from radio bans to buried NDAs, Wendy pulled up with timestamps, receipts, and ice-cold testimony. This wasn't no gossip segment. This was war, and the courtroom, dead silent. What Wendy revealed about the twisted ties between Diddy, Jay-Z, and the puppet masters behind the scenes could shake the whole industry to its core. When Wendy Williams walked in, it didn't feel like a guest appearance.
Quite honestly, I think that this is the kind of couple that will stay together because it's good for business and because they don't want to disappoint us. They reportedly are trying to figure out a way to split without divorcing. In other words, a hood divorce.
Beyonce's true age, check. Yeah.
Well, what is her true age?
It felt like Judgment Day. That courtroom instantly became her purple chair, and every eye was locked on her like she was dropping a season finale. It felt like the return of a woman who had been buried alive and clawed her way back just to speak her truth loud and clear. Wendy didn't show up for shock value or headlines. She showed up because they tried to erase her. Lawsuit threats, industry blacklists, public humiliation. They threw everything at her to keep her quiet. But now, every so-called rumor she ever dropped on her mic is part of a full-blown federal investigation. She sat down slow, locked eyes with the jury, and adjusted that mic like she was back in her old studio. Except this time, it was under oath.
And we are going to be breaking down everything she said.
What's the tea? Well, spill it.
Then came her opening shot. I was never messy, I was never bitter, I was never lying, I was early. Boom, the room froze. Wendy didn't play. She came loaded with names, dates, and dirty receipts, and she made it very clear. She wasn't here to gossip. She was here to testify about the threats, the gaslighting, the power plays, and the twisted cover-ups she claimed were orchestrated by none other than Sean Diddy Combs. When I first spoke about Diddy, she told the jury, it wasn't to destroy him, it was to wake people up. Then she dropped the stack, bam, a pile of printed transcripts, leaked emails, and receipts lined up in perfect order. Timelines of alleged sabotage, messages from execs trying to shut her down, all of it right there in black and white. And the jury couldn't look away. She started spilling everything from way back in the early 2000s, back when Diddy was untouchable and everybody in the industry knew it. Wendy told the court flat out, you couldn't say a word about Puff without getting a phone call within the hour. That's how deep the protection ran. She walked the jury through moment after moment, station managers warning her to fall back, advertisers pulling their money, and veiled threats hitting her like clockwork. You're doing too much, Wendy. You're gonna get hurt. Those weren't suggestions, they were warnings.
You know, my thing about when you date a mogul is that it's really difficult to avoid them because if you use your head, you never know when they're gonna pop up on the scene. Like he's mogul, like he can hire a plane right now, zoom it to South Africa, land on the roof of the hotel where she's staying, okay? Pay people off at the front desk, give me the key and let me up in her room. Like I'm already paranoid as a person. But to know that somebody could actually swoop down on me in the middle of nothing would scare the bejesus out of me.
And then came the story that stunned the room. Wendy said she was literally chased out of her radio station by a girl group Diddy allegedly sent after her. Total. I said they were broke, she recalled, and within hours they were waiting for me outside my building. That ain't just a wild coincidence, that's pressure, that's coordination. Wendy described her entire career like she was dodging landmines. Every single time she aired out something about Diddy, from his wild parties to the way he treated his artists, boom, something on her end would fall apart. Sponsors gone, syndication offers dead, networks pulling back. One by one, they tried to clip her wings, but Wendy made it clear she never folded. You can blackball me, you can threaten me, but you can't erase me. And now, she said it all with her hand on the Bible, face to face with the jury, under oath and unbothered. So I hope they're listening, Wendy said, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a knife, because I'm not stopping, not until the truth is loud enough to shut their whole machine down.
I'm rapping in my headphones and I'm going downstairs. My new boyfriend at the time, the bad Kevin, he was picking me up. But no, this is when he was the good Kevin, right? So I'm walking in the elevator with my intern at the time, Skeletor, but look, I'm like, why is everybody looking down at the sidewalk? I mean, noses were pressed to the glass. And I get downstairs and find this girl group jump out of a gypsy cab to come after me, to kick. And I'm like, for what? You know what I said was true. You all are broke and you were living in the projects. And that was that. But the point I'm making is, you know, Amanda, you shouldn't have, I didn't get back on the radio and talk about it. What I did was desire to do better so I can have a purple chair and talk about it right now and then have the whole scene play out in the Lifetime movie.
When the prosecution asked her about the culture surrounding Diddy, Wendy didn't hold back, but she didn't stay on him either. She made a sharp pivot, straight at someone else she's been warning the public about for years, Jay-Z. Her tone got colder. Her eyes scanned the jury like she was watching them wake up in real time. You can't talk about what Diddy did, she said, without talking about the ones who stood beside him, smiling, nodding, while the abuse went down. Then she dropped the name that made the courtroom tense up, Jay-Z. And then she leaned in. Y'all remember Foxy Brown, she asked. She was 15, Jay-Z was 27, and he was everywhere with her. Then came the part that had jaws dropping. Wendy pulled out lyrics from Foxy's debut album, songs Jay-Z reportedly wrote for her. Ain't no nah like the one I got, no one can fuck me better.
We come from a very homosexual era of hip hop as well. There was a radio personality once upon a time, her name was Wendy Williams, and she was practically burned at the stake for talking about such. And now it's all come full circle. There were many situations, none of which to talk about, but there were many situations back in the day in my career, and it's all coming full circle now, so.
She read it slow, deliberate, ice cold. The courtroom recoiled. You tell me, she snapped, why was a grown man writing lyrics like that for a child? Wendy wasn't guessing. She kept going with insider-level details. Whispered stories from the industry, allegations that Jay would scoop Foxy from school, that he paid for her glam, shopping sprees, hair appointments, the whole nine, all bankrolled by a man nearly twice her age. And the jury? Silent. Nobody blinked. This wasn't some record deal, Wendy said, her voice sharp. This was grooming. And just when the room thought it couldn't get any darker, Wendy dropped another bomb, a tape. A rumored tape that had been whispered about in industry corners for years. Jay-Z, Foxy Brown, and Jamie Foxx. All supposedly caught on footage no one's ever seen. Why? Because it vanished. Wendy didn't blink as she laid it out. The moment that rumor caught heat, Foxy's home was suddenly burglarized. And the tape? Gone. She paused, let the silence sit heavy. Coincidence? I think not.
And Puffy. You had me speeding through numerous traffic lights, doing in a nightclub. You remember, you had me do the perp walk and spend a few hours in jail? Die!
Shortly after, Wendy said she was booted from her top-rated radio show, all for daring to say out loud what others only whispered, that Jay-Z's alleged ties to underage girls needed to be investigated, not ignored. They called me toxic, she told the court, but now you're seeing Everything I asked was worth asking. Then came the big question from the prosecution. Did she have proof? Wendy didn't flinch, she nodded. Emails, call logs, producer names, receipts from major players who ghosted her the moment she mentioned Jay's name. She told the jury that Jay-Z's team had been making quiet calls behind the scenes, pushing insiders to blacklist her, and anyone else who even mentioned Foxy. They made me the villain, she said, just for asking what any decent person should have asked. And this time, everyone was finally listening. Then Wendy locked eyes with the jury and hit them with this. You think I lost sponsors for being messy? I lost sponsors because I was right, and they couldn't risk that truth spreading. That's when she leaned into what she called the part nobody wanted to believe. The piece of truth that got her branded as a liar, a loudmouth, a problem.
When Foxy and Jay-Z had,
I'll Be.
I'll
Yeah,
Be?
that was a good one.
Okay, Foxy was the star of that. Jay-Z was standing in the corner, wringing his hands, talking about, okay, all right, what do I do next? And then, you know, this was allegedly a romantical thing. It's all right, I'll say alleged, but we know. Yeah, she hit it before Beyonce. Allegedly.
I was the first to say it, she reminded them. Those weren't parties, they were operations. Boom, that word hit like a grenade. She was talking about the now infamous freak-offs, a term that's dead center in the current federal case against Diddy. Wendy said she first caught wind of those twisted events in the late 90s, back when Bad Boy Records was running the game. She painted a chilling picture. Phones snatched at the door, strict NDAs signed, candle escorts guiding people through the house, cameras set up, guests assigned to rooms. This wasn't no party, she said. This was a ritual. And she wasn't just relying on rumors. She called out names. Wendy reminded the court that Kareen Superhead Steffens had once gone on her show and said it flat out. Diddy invited her to one of these events and asked for male involvement. She didn't lie, Wendy said. She told me everything, the setups, the paranoia, the drugs, the weird energy in those rooms, and the way he controlled it all. This wasn't tabloid talk, this was testimony, and every word had the jury locked in. She said he was scared I'd expose him, Wendy told the court, and then she leaned in, eyes locked, voice steady. So I made sure people heard that interview. I played it over and over because the truth was too heavy to just let it slip away. She wasn't done. Wendy said it wasn't just Superhead. She'd heard similar disturbing stories from multiple guests, both men and women who'd gone to Diddy's so-called parties and came back shaken to their core. They didn't just party, she said. They were told what to do, what to wear, who to touch, what room to enter. Everything was controlled, nothing was casual. Then Wendy dropped something straight out the federal indictment. She testified that 3 separate people told her they saw IV bags being used to recover from those nights. 4 bags at parties. With medical assistants on standby, Wendy didn't blink. This wasn't socializing. This was organized depravity. She pulled out a list. No real names and just pseudonyms. But each one belonged to a person who had given her private testimony about what went on behind those closed doors. The courtroom went dead silent because one by one, their stories lined up with what Cassie Ventura, Gene Deal, and other key witnesses were now testifying in open court. And then Wendy dropped the final hit of that segment, the phrase that made even the toughest faces in the room flinch. The baby oil, she said. I said it on air like it was a joke, Wendy confessed, staring straight ahead. But it wasn't funny, not even close. She was talking about the infamous baby oil and the part that left the room stunned. They really found over 1,000 bottles, just like I said. Then she dropped the reason why. You know how I knew? Because people told me, and I was the only one bold enough to say it out loud. She leaned back in her chair, calm but firm, and locked eyes with Diddy across the courtroom. All these years later, and this is where we are. It's not gossip, it's evidence now. The courtroom grew tense, quiet, and then Wendy shifted gears. She turned her attention to someone she had defended for years, long before it was safe to do so, Cassie Ventura. I said it back then, she declared, eyes locked on the jury. Y'all were hypnotized by the diamonds, the music videos, the red carpets, but I saw something else. I saw a scared girl. I saw imbalance. She told the court she'd been trying to sound the alarm since 2008, warning listeners that Diddy's control over Cassie wasn't love. It was manipulation. She was 19, Wendy said. He was pushing 40. That's not a romance. That's leverage. She explained how Diddy's empire, The jets, the security, the industry power moves made it nearly impossible for Cassie to walk away. She couldn't escape, Wendy said, and everyone around him made sure of that. I said it then, and I'll say it again. She didn't need a boyfriend. She needed a bodyguard. Wendy's voice echoed through the courtroom as she recalled a chilling clip she aired years ago on her show, an interview where Cassie sat beside Diddy, head down, eyes low, and flinched the moment his voice got sharp. People called it nerves, Wendy said. I called it trauma, but nobody listened. Then the prosecution brought the receipts. A detailed timeline of Wendy's old broadcasts matched exactly with events now listed in Cassie's legal claims. The courtroom went quiet again. Wendy continued, her voice steady. I was told Diddy had access to her phones, that he would just appear at her hotels, that staff were ordered to unlock her doors, no questions asked. She paused, and the moment I said that out loud, my sponsors vanished, show pulled, silence enforced. Then Wendy brought up the turning point, the incident in 2018 when Cassie reportedly ended the relationship after Diddy allegedly forced his way into her home. That wasn't the first time, Wendy stated. That was just the time she finally had enough. She looked around the courtroom and hit them with the truth people don't want to admit. When a mogul wants control, they don't need permission. They make the whole whoa. Wendy gave the courtroom a bone-chilling breakdown of how men in power really operate. She laid it all out, how moguls groom, isolate, and use their influence like weapons. How they wrap victims in diamonds, jets, and photo ops, not out of love, but control. He didn't love Cassie, she said coldly. He owned her. And when Cassie broke free from the leash, that's when she became a threat. Wendy ended that part of her testimony with a truth she'd been holding on to for years. Everything in that lawsuit, I saw it coming. I said it on air, and now finally she's being heard. She took a breath and then hit the courtroom with the question that shook the air. But at what cost? Wendy adjusted her mic, her voice slower now, not shaky, just heavy with truth. You don't get to talk about men like Diddy and walk away untouched. I knew that, but I didn't realize how deep it would go until it hit me personally. She testified that back in 2004, at the very height of her radio dominance, she got a direct message from a record label executive. Stop talking about Puff, or else. Wendy didn't back down. She kept going, and the price came fast. The very next week, boom, she was yanked from her afternoon slot. No excuses, no cover. They didn't even bother hiding it, she said. It was punishment. She told the court that Diddy made calls, strategic ones, to label heads, tour promoters, and radio execs, telling them to cut ties with Wendy immediately. Wendy didn't sugarcoat it. She looked the jury dead in the eye and said, one program director told me straight up, you went too far. You poked the wrong bear. Then she brought the story that made the room lean in, the day she was nearly jumped right outside her own studio. The same girl group she once called Washed Up and Broke on air, Total. Wendy said they didn't just show up by chance. You really think they were just randomly outside my building? Nah, they were sent. She painted the scene, fans crowded at the glass lobby window, her boyfriend parked outside, her intern freaking out inside. That wasn't a coincidence, she said. That wasn't even a confrontation. That was a message. We can get to you. But it didn't stop there. Wendy testified how one by one doors started slamming shut. BT events, disinvited, media passes revoked, ad deals gone without a word. It was a system, she explained, a full-on takedown. Diddy didn't just want me quiet, he wanted me erased. And she brought the proof. Wendy pulled out printed emails, real ones, from PR reps tied to Bad Boy back then. Emails that all said the same thing. Distance yourself from Wendy Williams. One line hit the jury hard. Per client instruction, we will no longer be booking talent on Wendy Williams. Every word backed by receipts. Show that client, and Sean Combs, Wendy said, holding the paper high for the court to see. She wasn't done. I wasn't the first to be blackballed, she told the jury, but I was one of the very few who stayed loud about it. Then she turned directly to them, no fear in her eyes. That's what he does. If you speak up, you lose everything, your microphone, your money, your name. A beat. But I didn't fold. I talked through the silence, and now, here I am. Wendy paused, letting the weight of her words settle before diving into something even deeper, a truth people had dodged for decades. Looking back now, hip-hop came out of a very homosexual era. she said carefully, quoting herself from past broadcasts. That wasn't shade, that was truth. And for that truth, I got burned at the stake. She explained how, in the early 2000s, the industry created a silent firewall, shielding certain stars while punishing those who asked questions. We knew what not to say if we wanted to keep our jobs, she added. Even Charlemagne knew. But Wendy said it anyway. She brought up her 2004 book, The Wendy Williams Experience, filled with coded warnings and veiled hints about the after-dark lives of Diddy, Jay-Z, and others in their circle. Back then, they laughed it off. People called it gossip, Wendy said, but now the government calls it evidence. Wendy brought the court back to 2009, to an interview she did with former Bad Boy artist Mark Curry, right after he released his explosive book, Dancing with the Devil. In that sit-down, Curry didn't hold back. He called Diddy the shadow that ruins people, Wendy said, and I agreed. But then, like clockwork, that entire interview mysteriously vanished from the station's archives. She told the court that every time she tried to give a voice to someone speaking out, Superhead, Gene Deal, Jaguar Wright, she faced heat, pushback, threatening emails, even FCC complaints. They came for me from every angle, Wendy said, trying to shut me up, trying to shut it all down. Then she dropped something that snapped the courtroom to attention. There was a list, not a written one, but one everybody in the game knew existed. A list of people you couldn't talk about, people who were off limits. And when I broke that rule, I paid for it. She explained how her Hot Topic segments were constantly flagged, how producers were being threatened behind the scenes, how reps were calling up executives, warning them to shut her down or risk losing talent. They told me straight up, Wendy said, back off or you'll mess it up for the station, for your crew, for yourself. But she didn't back off when she paused, took a breath, then hit them with it. But now, it's all messed up anyway because the truth is out. Wendy's voice dropped low as she closed that part of her testimony. This trial isn't the beginning, she said. It's the end of a cover-up. She stared at the jury. I've been sounding the alarm for 20 years. You just finally heard it. But then her tone changed, sharper now, razor precise. And if you think this is just about Diddy, you're wrong. She locked eyes with the jury. This is about the ecosystem that protected him, the network that stood behind him. Then came the bombshell. That includes names you were never supposed to hear inside a courtroom. She paused, just long enough to freeze the air. Tyler Perry, Oprah Winfrey. The courtroom went dead still. The prosecution asked her to clarify, and Wendy didn't hold back. There's a list in Hollywood, she said. You'll never see it, you'll never hold it, but trust me, it's real. A list of names you don't cross. A list that determines who gets protected and who gets erased. And if you do cross them, she said, you disappear. She told the court how, after her most explosive radio segments, after calling out not just Diddy's parties and manipulation, but also the protection machine behind it, her world started collapsing fast. And that included calling out Tyler Perry. I was blackballed, Wendy said bluntly, and not in secret. This was coordinated. She told the jury she had real sources and producers, agents, insiders, and they didn't sugarcoat it. They told me flat out, Wendy, your name is being passed around. They don't want you touching certain people or certain topics. You're being labeled as unstable. She explained how everything shifted after her fallout with the team behind Precious, a film backed by both Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey. That's when my access collapsed, she said. I went from red carpet invites to being erased off guest lists. One executive didn't even try to spin it. They said, Oprah's people don't want you near her anymore. Wendy stared at the jury. That's not just power, that's protection. And it was used to shield people like Diddy. Then came the story that silenced the room. Wendy said she once confided in Oprah, in private, about her own past trauma with abuse. She told me she respected me, that she'd never exploit that pain. But what happened next? The next thing I know, my abuser is on her show, getting interviewed, smiling, while I was being shut out of the industry. Wendy didn't call it a misunderstanding. That wasn't just betrayal, she said. That was retaliation. The jury looked stunned as Wendy laid it all out piece by piece. They smiled with him. They took the pictures. They knew what they were doing. They stood next to Diddy, Wendy said, her voice tight, while the rest of us were getting crushed for speaking out. And then she dropped the reason why, because they needed him, for deals, for reach, and for silence. Then came the twist that rocked the room, an email she was never meant to see. Wendy revealed that a PR firm accidentally forwarded her a message while handling crisis control for both Tyler Perry's studio and a brand linked directly to Bad Boy. The subject line, managing optics, Wendy, Puff, Tyler. That was it, but that was all she needed. Wendy looked straight ahead, calm, controlled. These aren't just isolated stars, she said. They're part of a machine, one that feeds off silence and destroys anyone who pulls the curtain back. By now, the courtroom was thick with tension. Every word she spoke landed heavy. Then came the moment prosecutors would later call a turning point in the trial. Wendy reached down and pulled out a thick file folder, tapped the cover once. This, she said, is a collection of NDA email threads and internal memos that were never supposed to see daylight. She made it clear this wasn't some illegal leak. I didn't hack anything, she said. These came from people who used to be part of the machine and finally had enough. And with that, the room braced itself for what was inside. They were tired, Wendy said, her voice raw. Tired of watching women disappear, tired of seeing truth brushed off as gossip. She opened the folder and began reading aloud from a 2007 NDA. The name was blacked out, but the message, crystal clear. Subject agrees not to disclose any private gatherings, recordings, or interactions involving Sean Combs, his guests, or associates. Then came the kicker. Violation of this agreement may result in financial penalties and public retaliation. Wendy slammed the page down. Public retaliation, she repeated. That's how deep this thing goes. She didn't stop there. Next, she pulled out an internal email from a major luxury hotel chain. She read it line by line. We have prepared the presidential suite with all requested amenities, including extra linens, candlelight lighting, and discretion measures. Mr. S's assistant will arrive for setup prior to guest entry. The date? 2015. Cassie was still with Diddy. Wendy raised her eyes to the jury. You think this was just celebrity partying? Number, this was a system. It was planned, funded, scheduled, and cleaned up afterward. Then came the next blow. She revealed that she had direct proof of payments made to publicists, talent managers, and even bloggers, all to keep the story straight, all to protect Diddy and destroy anyone who tried to speak. This wasn't chaos. It was a machine with handlers. Wendy held up the next piece of evidence, an email. This one sent to a writer with clear instructions. Avoid any mention of recent rumors. Focus the article on Diddy's philanthropic work. Redirect the narrative. Bury the mess. That was the game. Then came the photo, shown to the jury by prosecutors. Diddy, Tyler Perry, a well-known media consultant famous for crisis sweep operations, all smiling together at a 2019 gala. Wendy stared at it and didn't flinch. They were smiling, she said, smiling while women were being paid to shut up and others were being destroyed for refusing to sign. Then came the personal blow. Wendy told the court that she, too, had been offered an NDA. They wanted me silent, she said. They told me I could have a syndicated TV deal if I just stopped talking about the topics I was covering. Her answer? I said no, and I paid the price. The jury sat frozen. No one moved. Then Wendy dropped the final gut punch. The silence they bought, it cost people their freedom, their peace, their truth. A pause. And now, it's all unraveling, one NDA at a time. As Wendy reached the final part of her testimony, she didn't cry. She didn't break. She just sat there, holding the weight of 2 decades of screaming into a void, while the world refused to listen. You see Diddy on trial, Wendy said, her voice steady and clear. But I see something much bigger. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't have to. The room was already locked in. This isn't just about what he did. It's about who let him do it. She gestured toward the defense table. You see one man, but behind him, there's a legacy of silence, a tower built on fear, on NDAS, on power plays, party invites, and billion-dollar handshakes. Then she turned directly to the jury and didn't blink. And every time someone tried to speak, that tower crushed them. She reminded the court that while Diddy was the one in the hot seat, others, Jay-Z, Tyler Perry, Oprah, the labels, the handlers, they'd watched the storm build for years. Some saw it up close. They shook his hand. They cashed his checks, and they made sure anyone who asked questions got erased. Then came Wendy's final words, with that unmistakable voice that once shook the airwaves. They called me bitter, they called me crazy, but I was right. And I'd rather be right in hell than silent in heaven. She looked over at Diddy, still stone-faced, still silent. You thought I was gone. You thought your power would keep you safe. She paused, but now you're sitting where the truth finally caught up to you, and I hope it's loud. Before stepping off the stand, Wendy turned to the courtroom gallery one last time. This trial isn't the end. It's the beginning of people finally naming names, of the walls cracking, and of the whole tower falling. And with that, she walked out, not as a talk show host, not as the gossip queen, but as a witness whose voice could no longer be denied.